How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law and your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Oh, hey, folks. It's me and Dr. Joe right here at WATD.
Are we really?
We're here.
Here we are.
We're here live in studio.
We're live in studio.
With Dave.
With Dave. And we cannot hear...
There.
I hear something very...
That's a great song. Do you hear it now? Can you hear it?
That sounds like a song I wrote.
Wow. All right. Yeah, we can hear it great now, Dave. Yeah, thanks.
But just a show and go. Yeah.
So I kind of came in early, I think.
Little.
So now is when I get
Now
ready
we can
to...
start over.
Yeah. Thanks for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. Because here we are, me and Dr. Joe, on the Dr. Joe Show. Well, we're going to hear the whole song, I think. I love it.
It's a good song.
It is a good song.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful vocalist.
Yeah, that's Sophie Schrand. She's something.
She's got a new show dropping, right?
Yeah, she's doing some great stuff with the Boston Museum of Science.
So cool.
Her cross-country trip in the electric vehicle. Can it be done and can it be fun? And yes, it can be both.
Yes.
Very proud of her. She did a great interview on NPR. You guys can listen to that as well. It's really fun.
That's awesome. That's great. And I saw you posted a new article in Psychology Today, which is always fun.
I did. I hope people can read it. And, if you got any comments or thoughts. This one is You Are the Ultimate Lie Detector. It's about how do you know when someone's lying?
How do you know when someone's lying?
It's fascinating because we all lie. At some point, we lie. Even little white lies as opposed to sort of dark and malicious lies.
Do we all lie, listener? Do you lie, listener?
Come on.
I don't lie.
Are you telling the truth?
I do my best not to lie. Lying is not useful.
I agree. I totally agree with you. But there may be little things that we do. Like I wrote an article about my wife saying, "Did you put on weight?" And I said no. And of course, I'd had like 2 or 3 pounds. But why do people lie?
Well, it's kind of like holding the secrets, right?
Yes, it's holding those secrets. And it has to do, in some cases, not wanting to be perceived a certain way. But are you telling me that you've never tried to surprise someone with a birthday present?
Right.
And told them, no, I don't have any presents for you. Or something like, that shirt looks great on you. When you know, sort of, not necessarily. So is that a lie? Yes. But it's a white lie. It's a lie that is attempting to be of service in some ways, as opposed to malicious lies where you are absolutely trying to con someone and take advantage of them.
Yeah. So what was the article about?
It's about how can you tell?
Is it are there tells? Is it like looking away, looking down, body language?
All those things, absolutely, because the vast majority of people are not very good at lying because we have an honest disposition in us. There are some people who don't.
Sociopaths.
And sometimes you don't even need to be a full sociopath. I mean, I remember, one of the stories I wrote about, not in this article, but a previous one, was being in our home. We were living in Waltham at the time. Our kids were much, much younger, and it's early in the morning, and I hear this shouting. And it's one of my kids. And I go running downstairs, and there's a bee in the kitchen. And the bee is swarming around trying to get to my kid because they had chocolate all over their face. We got the bee away, and I look and I see that there were all these Milano cookies that had been opened up and all the chocolate licked off by one of my kids. And I said, did you eat all those cookies and lick all the chocolate off? And they looked at me and said, no. And their covered in chocolate. Covered. So why do you think that kid would have lied?
Didn't want to get in trouble.
Didn't want to get in trouble. Right. So sometimes we sort of compound the trouble by pretending that something didn't happen. So.
Right. You know, it's funny. I use the example of Roger Clemens and Andy Pettit. I don't know if you remember the whole steroid scandal.
Yeah.
And the difference in the way they're going to be treated as we look back in history. You know, Roger Clemens was an amazing pitcher. Andy Pettit was very good, probably not as good as Roger Clemens. They both were accused of using steroids, a performance-enhancing drug. And Roger Clemens took the position of, making counter-accusations and deny. And Andy Pettit got out in front of it and said, yep, I didn't know better. I made a mistake. And I think history will forgive him. But Roger Clemens, the cover-up, it's always worse than the action.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, human beings, we want to be able to trust other people. And yet there's part of our brain that has to be on high alert so much of the time. Because if we trust someone and we get it wrong, we could be lunch.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, and we've investigated this quite a bit over the years. When somebody is untrusting, right, they have a tendency to never believe and always dig in and, are suspicious of every little thing. And my analysis typically is that they're not a trustworthy person. Do you find that as something where somebody who's not trusting is not trustworthy? They're suspicious of other people because they're thinking, this is what I would do in this situation, so I got to make sure that that's not happening to me right now.
I think there's some people like that. I think many people who are not trusting is because they have had some trauma. Something has happened to them, and it's very difficult to not incorporate everyone into that one person that hurt them or multiple people that hurt them. So I think that there are some people who it's called a projection, where you project that mistrust onto others because you are not trustworthy yourself.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have difficulty with trust because they've been hurt.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, if somebody, to name them, somebody come to mind that...
Yeah, in business practice, you run into it in business practice quite a bit, and it's like, why are you questioning this? Why are you digging into this, and why are you, falsely accusing other people of questionable things? So it's interesting, and it always makes me wonder, why, and sometimes I'm naive and I'm over trusting sometimes.
But that's not a bad thing, Mark. But anyway, go on. We'll talk about you in a minute.
Let me lie down.
Yeah.
Take my shoes off.
No, we're not lying. The whole idea is that we're not lying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, so I've always kind of sat back and thought, okay, if this person is so untrusting, can I trust them?
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I wanted to get. I wanted to talk about that and find out if there's some studies on that or anything like that.
Sure. And again, there will be a lot of studies on those things. And there are some people who just, for whatever reason, you can't trust them. But you know what I'm going to say, right?
No, I think I do.
It's coming.
You ready?
There are some people that we absolutely trust who have never lied to us. And those, early as it may be, by 30 seconds, are our sponsors. So with that in mind, let's take a listen to our trustworthy sponsors. No lie. We'll be right back with, ready? Me and Dr. Joe.
Hey folks, thank you for listening to the Dr. Joe Show. We've been investigating whether or not we want to bring sponsors into our podcast. What are your thoughts? Do you know somebody who might be a good partner with the Dr. Joe Show, who may want to align their product or service with the Dr. Joe Show? Think about it.
Thank you, Dave. We'll take it from here. It's me and Dr. Joe on the Me and Dr. Joe Show. Enjoying a nice Thursday evening. I hope you are as well, listener.
Yeah, and we're talking about lying, truth, trust. These are, some of the blogs that I'm posting recently on Psychology Today. But one of the other things that I want to talk about was drug story theater.
Yes.
Okay. And it's possible. I don't know whether we've got some drug story theater kids coming in, but we had a wonderful. Wonderful show recently at the Plymouth Library.
Is it the new show?
It is the new show. The new show, Back to Life, talking about Narcan. We're very much trying to destigmatize Narcan. Narcan, as you guys know, is a life-saving drug that reverses opioid overdose and has saved we don't know how many lives.
Yeah.
And everybody has access to it now. You can just get it literally at a drugstore over the counter. You don't need a prescription anymore. And people should have it. But a lot of people are worried, well, if I've got Narcan or if I have Narcan around, does that mean that I'm going to be around people who are using? A lot of parents are worried that their kids, if they're carrying Narcan, are going to be around other people who are using. But what I want to reframe is that you have a kid with Narcan who may go into a bathroom at McDonald's or Burger King or any restaurant or the supermarket, anywhere, and they may see someone who's overdosing.
Yeah.
They could save a life. They will save a life. First thing you do, you call 911 and then you administer the Narcan. It is the simplest thing to administer. You just basically take it and spray it up someone's nostril.
Like a nasal spray.
Like a nasal spray. It's remarkable. It goes right to the brainstem, which is where the opioids are trying to shut down your breathing and your heart rate, kicks that opioid off of there, brainstem reactivates, person breathes, you've saved a life.
So is the idea that everybody has Narcan with them?
Yes, that's the idea. Everybody has Narcan. Why not? I mean, everybody has an identification. Everybody has certain things. I mean, there are certain things that we all just carry around naturally.
But we're not all carrying around like an EpiPen. And
No.
Somebody could get stung by a bee.
Right, but think about that. The person who's carrying an EpiPen knows that they're at risk. But wouldn't it be interesting if everybody carried an EpiPen?
That's what I mean.
Yeah. But how would you know? You see, if you give epinephrine to someone who doesn't need it, that can actually have a side effect. That will increase their heart rate. But Narcan, it's got one job.
So if someone were to fall asleep on a bench,
Yeah.
and someone gave them Narcan, it wouldn't negatively affect them. I mean, it'll wake them up probably.
It'll
right?
wake them up. It's not going to hurt them.
Okay.
No, it's not going to do anything to hurt them. They may be like, what are you doing?
Right.
And we see that a lot in folks who are overdosing, and they get Narcan, and they get revived, and they're sometimes very angry.
Right.
They don't realize they've died. They don't realize they're in the process of dying. All they know is that they're not high right then.
Right.
It's not even being in acute opioid withdrawal, which is very uncomfortable. This is, it's remarkable. A person who's using is not expecting to die, and yet part of them knows that that's the risk, especially now with fentanyl, and I think there's something else on the street now that's even more powerful than fentanyl. So we have a lot of opportunity to save lives by normalizing Narcan as something that we just have around. And it's okay to have it in your medicine cabinet, but you're going to have to really get to your medicine cabinet really quickly. So it's not a bad thing to have. So that's what our kids are talking about with Drug-Free Theater. We've got this new show that Heather wrote based on one of her experiences that she said was life-changing for her. That was the aha moment, where she was at a party. She was also using at the time, many years ago. And one of the drugs that we're using, I think it was ecstasy, was laced with fentanyl. And the person didn't realize it, overdosed, but one of their friends had Narcan in the house.
Wow.
And they were able to save a life. Yeah. And in the show, it's a bit of a spoiler, but one of the other kids, the kid whose house it is, who gets the Narcan, they save this friend's life, then realizes, oh no, now I've got to tell my mom that I need another Narcan. And she's going to ask why you used it. So that added another dimension to the show about, what do you do when you've used it and maybe it's at a party, maybe it's on someone you know.
Yeah.
What do you do next? The next thing you do is be sure that the person is alive, 911, but you get them help as well. You stay with them. You stay with them while they are recovering, because that Narcan doesn't last forever, and it can actually wear off while the opioid is still in your system, and you can go into overdose again.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So you got to stay with the person and be sure they're okay until 911 comes, and then continue to help. This is a marathon, not a sprint recovery. But so many people, they don't expect to overdose. They're maybe using something that has nothing to do with opioids, but it's laced with something.
Right.
And that's what this particular play was about, Back to Life.
So best practices is to have Narcan available everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. And I think one of the kids was telling us that I think there are some states now where you can actually get it out of like a dispensary machine, like you're getting a candy bar.
Really?
You can just pop the button and out comes an Narcan.
Wow.
Massachusetts should be doing that.
Yeah. How are we going to solve this epidemic?
I think the first thing is to, and I think we're doing it slowly but surely, is moving away from the stigma of using drugs and alcohol. Right?
And abusing, right? And being addicted to them.
Being addicted and dependent on them.
Yeah.
Because we still, unfortunately, see people with addiction as somehow immoral, bad. I mean, talk about trust, untrustworthy. And there is some brain science to that as well, right? I mean, we know that all drugs and alcohol force your brain to make dopamine, which is the neurohormone of pleasure. Dopamine interferes with oxytocin, which is the neurohormone of trust and happiness. So as you've heard me say many times, you can get high, but the price you pay is trust. And that's brain. And that's why addiction is not about morality, it's about mortality. It's the way the brain is. So when you're interfering with somebody else's ability to trust you, don't be surprised that they then will create an entire persona around you. But that person who's creating the persona has an opportunity to step back as well and not go limbic and not think they're in danger. Keep it frontal, don't go limbic. So how are we going to get over this epidemic? Is by saving lives, and then by hoping that the people whose lives were saved will then go and help somebody else who's also in the throes of addiction. And we have people like that. We have our peer recovery coaches and our specialists, and we actually have, certification now, recognizing that this is a real benefit to society. So you can become certified as a peer counselor, as a peer specialist. And that means that we recognize that you have something that you can offer other people to save their lives. But you've heard me with this phrase as well, contribute to society to help with your sobriety. I tell you, some of the people who I've worked with who have been in that position where they've overdosed and are now helping others, it is the most rewarding thing for them. And they'll be willing to say, and our Drugs-Free Theater kids say this as well, it feels better than any drug or alcohol. It is that oxytocin burst.
Yeah. It's that service of others, too.
Yes, and that's happiness.
Yeah.
Happiness, the interaction with somebody else, creating that oxytocin, that happiness, as opposed to the drug that's creating pleasure,
Right.
which is isolating and sometimes quite selfish. So hopefully folks out there are recognizing that you have an opportunity to help other people. The first thing to do is to step back, look again, respect why is somebody doing what they're doing, use the I am approach, wonder what's going on, that the best this person can do right now is put a needle in their arm. You know?
Yeah.
Not always an easy thing to do. You know, we have stigmatized people with addiction for a long time.
Yeah. The dark alleys.
Yeah. And they're scary. We can't trust them. So if we can't trust them, the best thing to do is to isolate them from our community.
Right.
Because at least if they're far enough away, they won't hurt us. That's the real dilemma. How is somebody meant to come for help if they think they're going to be judged?
Yeah.
And that's really what, that's what High Point has been doing. That's what Castle has been doing. That's now what Riverside is doing. That's what I've been doing, is trying to reframe addiction as something that has nothing to do with whether you're a good person or bad person. It's the brain. What's fascinating is, why would we have evolved a brain that can get addicted? And that adds, that's a whole nother really interesting discussion. So millions of years ago, our brains were conditioned to experience pleasure, not just happiness. It was really important for us to be able to remember the pleasure of that mango. And then next year, think, this may be about the same time that mango tree is blooming and producing fruit. I'm going to go check out, and there it is. So there's that reinforcer, and that's still dopamine. It's remarkably simple chemical. But it shows that our brains have evolved in a way to experience pleasure, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's what you do with it, And that's what we're hoping for. So that's what Drugs-Free Theater is about. You guys know that. Drugs-Free Theater, where we take kids in the early stages of recovery, teach them improvisational theater, we use psychodrama, and they create their own scripted shows about the seduction of, addiction to, and recovery from drugs and alcohol. And they have now performed those shows for tens of thousands, about hundreds of thousands of kids in Massachusetts.
That's awesome.
And I know, Mark, that one of your goals for Drugs-Free Theater is that, every sixth grader, high schooler, middle schooler in the United States should see it. And I absolutely agree. And we'll get there.
Well, it's impactful, right? Because it's not some adult telling the students, don't do this.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's your brain on drugs, or just say no. This is a peer-to-peer mentoring. It's life experiences, sharing those life experiences, and they can relate. Those in the audience can relate to what those kids have gone through, and I think it's really impactful. And when I said how can we put an end to this epidemic, I think Drugstore Theater is a big part of that solution, and that type of teaching of that age group, right? Because if you can get those kids by 6th grade, 12, 13, 14 years old, I think you could win the battle.
Yeah. Well, it is about prevention. It's about, preventing that first-time use.
Yeah.
And we know that one of the big causes for first-time use is low self-esteem, and how many kids are worried that they're just not good enough. That means if they're not good enough, they don't feel happiness, so they will turn to pleasure of dopamine.
Right.
And, again, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's the reality that we all want to feel valued by other people, and when we don't, that can feel so overwhelming that we sometimes don't make good decisions and think about the future. But I'm going to make a decision right now thinking about the future, because I want to hear from our people who give us happiness, our sponsors. Dave, let's take a commercial break. We'll be right back with me and Dr. Joe.
Hey, folks, welcome back. So any thoughts? Do you listen to other podcasts? Do you see how they do the sponsors? Is there a way that they're utilizing sponsors that you enjoy or you don't enjoy? I listen to SmartList, and I really enjoy how the co-hosts share the voiceover for the product or service. It's really funny for the most part, but it's unique. It's them really endorsing. Does that work? What do you think?
Thank you, Dave. We're back right here on WATD, me and Dr. Joe on the Me and Dr. Joe Show.
Formerly the Dr. Joe Show.
Yeah, for those who remember.
But it's still exploring who we are and why we do what we do.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we're going to explore a lot of things. We've got a live event coming up this next month, September 12th.
Yeah.
Right here at the Levitate Backyard on the South Shore.
Tell us about that, Mark. What's happening?
So one of the keynote speakers is this guy, Dr. Joe.
Oh.
So we're going to do, we're running an event, a live event, first live event I've ever done. A similar model as the TED Talks, right? So we're going to have 3 very, very special speakers, Dr. Joe being one, and another individual who speaks nationwide to real estate agents and real estate attorneys about how to be authentic in a digital world, right? How you have some certain takeaways and things that you can implement into your practice right away that will help you bring value to those that you're serving. And then folks that are interested in real estate investing, we're going to have another speaker that's going to come and talk about real estate investing and 1031 exchanges. Leader Banks is bringing somebody in to talk about 1031 exchanges.
What is a 1031 exchange?
So a 1031 exchange, listener and Dr. Joe, is when you own a piece of real estate and you want to sell that piece of real estate, but you don't want to necessarily pay the capital gains tax right away, or you don't want to pay back the depreciation that you may have recognized over the years. So you can purchase another piece of real estate and defer the tax. You're not going to avoid the tax, but you can defer that. You can kick the can down the street, as they say, so long as you purchase something similar in nature. So a lot of times what happens, specifically, personally, I did this. I had a piece of property. It was a rental property, and you start to lose that love for that property, that specific property, but you don't necessarily lose the love of actually owning investment real estate. So what do? Well, if you sell it, there's going to be a big tax consequence. What you can do is if you identify another property, maybe this is one that you're going to enjoy, it's going to bring you more joy than the one that you currently own. You can sell that first property without receiving any of those proceeds, bringing in what's called a 1031. 1031 is part of the IRS code. So it's a section within the IRS code that allows you to defer those taxes that you would otherwise be obligated to pay. So as you close the property, those funds go into an account held by this qualified intermediary. So this person that steps in so that you don't receive those funds, and it goes directly to the property that you're purchasing, as long as it's at or above the value and it's a like kind. A lot of people call them like kind exchanges because it's a similar type of asset. So we're going to have somebody coming in and talking about that, because I think there's a lot of people out there that were in a similar situation as I was, which is I've owned this piece of property for 20 years and I really don't like it anymore. It's not something that I want to continue down the path. I want to buy something new and different. And sometimes you can expand that, because it's appreciated and it's built some amount of flexibility for you. So maybe you can buy 2 pieces of property or something that's bigger and can return more on your investment. So it's a really interesting strategy. I like to refer to it as borrowing money from the IRS at 0% interest rate, right? Because you're not paying that tax upon sale, which would really hinder your ability to then reinvest, right? Because you'd have to pay back a lot of what your quote profit would be.
Are you paying whoever is holding
Nominal fee. It's a service fee. So it's a great service. It's really interesting. And if there are real estate investors out there, real estate owners, I encourage you to come down and check out our event. It's September 12th at the Levitate Backyard. So it's going to be an amazing venue. It's going to be a beautiful day. I know that it's going to be a beautiful day. We're going to have their tacos, their world famous tacos there, and lemonade, and we're going to have a learning event. And then after it's over, it's going to be an amazing networking opportunity for the folks that join us. And you, Dr. Joe, will be kicking it off with an open discussion about navigating change. So a lot of things are happening. We're in an election year. In the real estate space, there's a lot of things going on that's causing a lot of anxieties. And the professionals who are involved in real estate, a lot of them come to me and they say, I'm part real estate agent, realtor, part therapist. And it's because the folks that they're working with are going through and managing through a lot of stressors, a lot of anxiety, right? Whether it's a distress scenario, whether there's a divorce or a death sometimes when you're selling properties. But sometimes you're downsizing, sometimes you're evolving in your journey of life where you've lived in this house for 20 or 30 years. Like, that's a big change. People don't really enjoy change. And we're looking forward to having you come and talk and utilize or share with them some strategies on how to approach people and how to help them. Right. And that's what these folks are in. They're in the business of relationships. They're in the business of serving others. This is a human relation business when you're in the real estate profession. And it's really important, when they say they're therapists, but they really, they're doing the best they can, but there's a lot of mirroring that goes on. Right. So a lot of times, when something gets amped up, the energy gets amped up and the anxiety gets amped up, it becomes this chaotic stew. So the goal is to have you come in with your I am approach and explain, some strategies that they can immediately implement, that they can immediately bring into their world, both professionally and personally. What we've talked about here on the show for 6 years since coming full circle of episode number 1, when me and Dr. Joe sat down. We talked about this. I mean, this was the topic when I was a guest, which was, dealing with anxiety during transition. Yeah,
and both sides. I mean, there's the buyer, the seller, and then the agents on both sides as well. Wasn't there some recent legal change or law change?
Yeah, so that's where the genesis of the idea of having this event was, right? There was a big class action settlement, and it created a whole litany of anxieties, really, and you could feel it. It was palpable. It's like, what's going to happen? Am I safe? Is this going to be okay? And as they're working through that, we're realizing, everything's going to be okay. Yet you could feel it. And that's what I wanted to do, is basically bring everybody together, gather together as a community and learn together and realize that we're going to be okay. Change is inevitable. And this is a change that is happening. How drastic is it going to be? Probably not as drastic as, you thought, right? The imagination will always be a little bit more torturous than reality will. But nonetheless, it's there, and we want to identify it. We want to take it head on and learn, right? So, as they say, change has a pathway, right? Denial. A lot of people will deny the change is happening. Resistance is the next stage of change. Resistance. Well, it may be happening, but I'm not changing. It's not gonna happen to me. And then you start to experiment with it. And that's where we're at, right? So we want to experiment. We want to share experiences. We want to work through ideas together. And then there's adopt. So you adopt and adapt to the change.
And what is the change actually that's happening?
Well, it's funny that you say that. So, when you talk to a lot of the real estate professionals, there's not much change to the ones that were doing it correctly, right?
Oh.
So if you were doing
what correctly?
Doing the transactions, meeting the clients, and fully disclosing all of what is happening. So what it really comes down to is, there's bad apples in every industry, right? So what was happening was they simply weren't explaining to the consumer what was happening, and there was this veil of secrecy, if you will, and the consumers felt as though they were being deceived. So this class action lawsuit came out and said, you have to be more open and you have to disclose more. So the professionals that were doing it all correctly are like, yeah, business as usual, no big deal. But then there's the ones that are like, what is it? What we have to tell the client that, how much we're getting paid, and who's paying us. And, for those folks, there's going to be change. It's going to be, challenging for them, but, it will have an attrition component to it because the bad actors will exit and the professionals will rise as they always do. What the future holds down the road, the crystal ball is a little bit murky as to what it's going to be. But like I said, the real professionals are going to survive. I mean, they're going to lead us through it, as they always do.
And I know I'm looking at one of them.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark Stiles of Stiles Law. No, seriously, the ethics, the sense that you just want to help other people in arguably one of the most stressful exchanges in their life.
Yeah.
And you do great. Well, we might not be able to anticipate what the future holds for real estate in that way, but we certainly can anticipate that our sponsors will want to tell us what's going on with them at this commercial break, which we will take right now. And we'll be back with me and Dr. Joe and Mark Stiles and Tom's there and everybody else. We'll be right back.
Hey, welcome back. And again, we're super grateful for you listening to the Dr. Joe Show. If you have anyone that you think might be a good sponsor, shoot us an email at drjoepodcast@gmail.com. DRJOE podcast@gmail.com. Give us your thoughts about the show, too. We're wondering, are we talking to the trees or are people really gaining value in this? Please let us know. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of the show.
And we're back. It's me and Dr. Joe, and you, the listener, listening to me and Dr. Joe talk about stuff.
All sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about, but you know what it's coming down to, though, is what we talked about at the beginning, which is trust.
It is.
Trust and being able to trust someone, and, the subterfuge that goes on, especially in business, right? Because everybody wants to make money by the end of the day with their business, but does that mean you have to devalue somebody else to get it? Can you get enough, feel comfortable, and everybody wins?
Right. And as long as everybody thinks it's fair and it's upfront and everybody understands the rules of the game, right, the scope of the engagement, and it's clear, then and provide the value. Right. So if there's a question about level of compensation, well, explain to them what you're going to do and do it. Right. Do it. Do a really good job. And then there's no question about it. What was happening was just this deceptive cloak of, don't worry, it's, the seller's going to pay, and I don't cost anything, so it's it's not going to cost you anything, and
that wasn't true.
Well, no, it wasn't. They were The buyer's agent was paid a service for what they were doing, and it now is being much more clearly spelled out. Again, I want to reiterate that the folks that were doing it right, there's not a lot of change that's happening. They provided value. They explained their value. It was upfront. It was disclosed. It was agreed upon, and they moved forward. What was confusing was the ones where I'll just show you a house, and we'll get you into the house, and and don't worry, the seller will pay me, and that was confusing for a lot of people, and now it's going to be less confusing, so it's going to be good.
Well, we're going to talk about it September 12th, and then we're going to come on the air live that evening and
with our other speakers, yeah.
Speaking of speakers, I think we may be getting a call in from Melvin of Drug Story Theater. So, Dave, let's bring him in.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Who's talking there?
This is Melvin.
Yeah, I thought so. Melvin of Drug Story Theater.
Yeah, Melvin, Drug Story Theater. I'm here with Heather and Caleb. We're driving. Sorry we couldn't make it. We got lost trying to find the place. We have to head back to Boston, Caleb and I. So,
well, I'm glad.
I said, let me call in.
I'm glad you're doing that. And Heather and Caleb with you. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Heather. How was your talk? I know that you gave a talk tonight on something. Can you?
It was great. It was really a beautiful night. We went to the vigil down at the Harbor Park. It was really good. Very sad, obviously, but really good.
Yeah. Can you explain, Heather, what the vigil is? Because some people may not know it, but if you're here in Marshfield, you may have seen a whole bunch of purple flags out by Town Hall. So tell people a little bit about the vigil.
Yeah, so over 2,000 people lost their lives, unfortunately, this year in Massachusetts. 4 of those lives being from Marshfield. So about a week ago, we went out to the town hall and we put up over 2,000 plaques, and you'll see the memorial there. But tonight at the Harbor Park, we held a vigil where everybody kind of spoke and, in remembrance of all their loved ones that they've lost to the disease.
Yeah.
We lit candles. It was beautiful.
So important that we never forget these folks, and that their memories, even though there's so much grief and sadness, also provide hope. And that's part of what we were also talking about earlier this week when we were at Plymouth, and you guys did a great performance of a play that you wrote, Heather. Right?
I did write it. Yeah, Back to Life.
Back to Life.
My real life experiences, and it was one of the experiences that I had that, made me wake up and realize, I'm not going to do this with my life anymore, because that could be me, next. So.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to still be here, and.
Well, we're all lucky to have you here. That's for sure. And Melvin, what was it like for you being there at the vigil today?
I mean, it hits home for me, considering the amount of people I've lost to this disease. To just looking at the lit candles and just all those purple ribbons that people were wearing, and hearing people share their stories of their personal experience of loss of family members and close friends. It really touches. It really hits home for me. So it was a little tough being there, but I was glad I could make it. This is just a night to honor their memories, and and that's one of the reasons why I love doing what I do, doing what we do in Drug Story Theater. If our stories could save at least one life, that I'll be able to sleep at night.
Yeah. And I know that they have, and more, it's the prevention for this upcoming generation so that they don't have to go down that same path. And how many of those kids are struggling with the loss of their loved ones? I mean, how many times have we worked with kids whose parents we know have been taken by the drugs and substances? So, Caleb, you're there too, huh?
Yeah, I sure am.
I'm glad. And just so folks know, so Caleb is also working with us with Drug Story Theater. He was our intern, been for many years, is now performing, but is not a person who was challenged and struggling with substance use. So, Caleb, from your perspective, what has this been like for you working with Drug Story Theater?
Oh, yeah, it's been so incredible. I have family members that my family has a history of addiction, and I mean, going to the vigil tonight, I couldn't help but sit there thinking wow, this was almost my cousin. Was one of these candles, and it was an incredibly powerful moment. But it's been incredible. Everybody's been so generous with their stories, and so incredibly courageous up on the stage in helping just all these communities and everything by just sharing their stories. Yeah, I mean, we are a narrative species in that way. You can just imagine us, when language was first evolving, being around those fires and hearing those stories. And that's part of what Drug Story Theater is. I don't know whether people know, but when I was in high school, I was doing a lot of theater, and one of the shows that we did was called Story Theater, which was taking Aesop's fables and dramatizing them. And I, in my professional career, have worked with so many people who have had drug stories, and that's where Drug Story Theater came from. That's how that name originated, Drug Story Theater. And we're still doing it all these years. It's been 10 years. Melvin, you've been with us for what, 10 years?
10 years. It's amazing. It still feels weird saying that it's been 10 years. We're all getting we're all definitely not adolescent anymore, but we're still here.
Yeah, and people can still relate. And Heather, you've been doing this 9 years, 8 years?
I want to say I thought I've been doing it for 10 years.
You may very
well start this. What year did we start?
December 2014.
Yeah, actually, Heather, you were the second show that got created.
Yeah.
So
that would be 9 years.
9
Coming
years.
Coming up 10 this December.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And we're still here. I mean, and that's the name of another one of our shows, is We're Still Here, based on ACEs and trauma and the trauma that our kids experienced that contributed to their desire to have at least some pleasure, if not happiness. Guys, I'm so glad that you called in tonight. I'm sorry couldn't make it in, but we're going to take a rain check on this. And I want guys to come back in studio. Folks, Drug Story Theater, www.drugstorytheater.org. That's theater with an ER, because so many of our kids wind up there. Please check it out. Kathleen, our COO, Nicole, my executive director, I want to thank them. There will be many, many more shows. Stay alert. Stay safe. And remember, it's not about morality. It's about mortality. Heather, Melvin, Caleb, thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys. And folks,
see you tomorrow.
That's right. In studio. We'll see you all next week on Me and Dr. Joe.